my friends. Dennis Gebhardt here with Guru Nation. Looks like it's time to have another episode of Brain Smoke. Sometimes I feel like I'm living in the movie Groundhog Day. If you remember that movie, or if any of you have seen it, Bill Murray, every morning he gets up and he repeats the same procedure. And sometimes in the world of hair color, I think it's very much like Groundhog Day. We do our best as a company to, give good quality education founded on science and based on fact. And yet, when you go onto social media, any one of the platforms today, you see people sharing information with passion and conviction, but it's not accurate. And so it gets very, very confusing. And today we're going to talk about pH. You would think that we wouldn't need to have that conversation again, but for those of you that may not be fully grounded in pH and what it means to us in our business, I want to kind of share some interesting things about it and why it's so important, especially when you're working with chemicals, is to understand that. And then what I decided I would do is, because there's several messages that have been out on social media, one of them about not rinsing bleach with water, another one about how an acid can change the pH, equal parts of acid and alkaline. Well, the acid will be strong enough to bring it to someplace in the middle. So today what I'm going to share with you is not only accurate information, but I also have some visuals for you. So hopefully you can take this information and really empower yourself with it. So without wasting any time, let's go ahead and get started. So if you have a pencil and paper, you might want to keep it by your side to take some of these notes. I have a feeling this session is going to be a little lengthy. I have a lot of subject to talk about, but we'll try and move through it as quick as we possibly can. So right now, I'm going to turn myself into a pH chart. Now, here's one of the things I want you to notice about this pH chart. First of all, notice that on the left-hand side of the pH chart, it is colored in green, which depicts acid. So anything with that falls in that green zone, we consider it an acid. On the right-hand side of the pH chart, everything is colored red. So anything that falls into that red zone is what we would call alkaline, or we might call it base. So in the laboratory, when we talk about something that is alkaline or alkali, we consider it base. Now, in the middle of the chart, you will see the chart runs from 1 on the left side to 14 on the right side. And in the very center, we have 7, which most people consider to be neutral. I'm not sure that's an accurate word for it. I think it's really more of a balance point. So 7 is really, it has some alkalinity, it has some acidity to it, but it's considered a balance point. So normally distilled water would be considered to have a pH of 7. Understand also that this scale is logarithmic. Now, that's a big word. And what that simply means is that every time I move from one number to the next number, I am exponentially growing. So from one number to another number, as I move up the chart or down the chart, it is 10 times stronger. So what I mean is, if I started at 7 and I had 1 Coca-Cola, and then I moved to 8, I would have 10 Coca-Colas, 10 times stronger. And then I would move to 9, I would have 100 Coca-Colas. And I moved to 10, I would have 1,000 Coca-Colas. So the difference between a mixture that has a pH of 7 and a mixture that has a pH of 10 is like 1,000 times stronger. So this pH chart is essential in helping us understand the difference between acidity and alkalinity. And here's one of the golden rules in chemistry, is that alkaline will always be stronger than acid. So alkaline would always be stronger than acid unless we go way beyond to the furthest part of that chart to the left to where we have the strongest corrosive acids we can possibly find. But even at that, it's still not going to move an alkaline substance. So we have to keep that in mind. It takes more acid, or not more acid necessarily, more treatments with acid to change an alkaline substance. So in the middle of the scale, we consider it to be what we call balance point or neutral, and that's where water would live. And water plays a real important role in this because pH stands for parts hydrogen or potential hydrogen. So it's important to understand that what we're trying to measure on this chart is how much hydrogen there is in a liquid. So this really is for measuring liquids, and it's for measuring the potential hydrogen in that liquid. So how does it all start? Well, first of all, we have to think about two water molecules, H2O2. I'm sure you're all familiar with H2O2 water. Two water molecules sitting side by side through a process called ionization. Ionization, a water molecule will steal a hydrogen molecule from one oxygen molecule. They will steal hydrogen molecules. When that happens, because it's just a normal process of ionization in the water, what happens is the one that has stolen the extra hydrogen molecule becomes more positively charged, moving to the green side, and the one who has lost the hydrogen molecule now changes its name. It's now called a hydroxide, or it's identified as an OH, and it is negatively charged. So the further up the negative side of the scale that the solution moves, the more of a negative effect it has on the hair, and negative effects will cause the hair to swell. So that's what's happening when we put an alkaline substance on the hair. We're creating a swelling effect because of the negative charges in that mixture. So remember that acids on the left, alkalines on the right, 7's a balance point. It all started with a H2O2 or H2O water molecule, and one stole one hydrogen molecule from the other, and now one becomes a hydroxide and one becomes more acid as it works its way into the green zone of the pH scale. So now what we need to do is we need to place the products that we deal with on this pH chart. So let's take a look at the pH chart one more time. And you will see the first thing we're going to put on that pH chart is water. Now, we would assume that water has a pH of 7. That's what we assume distilled water has. But sometimes it will fluctuate based on where you live, based on your plumbing. It may affect the water that you're using, and it may have a higher pH. In some parts of the country, pHs range as high as 8 or 8.5. And, you know, you're getting into really strong alkaline water in those areas. So what we want to do now is we want to show a video of taking the pH of distilled water. So sit back, enjoy, and I'll see you after the video. All right. Well, I bet you found that interesting. Now that we've established that the pH of water in our video test was about 7.5, 7 to 7.5, we have to ask ourselves, is that at that balance point, how does water play a role in the pH scale? Now, water is also known as the universal solvent. What does that mean? That means that water takes on the pH of whatever you mix it with. So, for example, if I were to take water and mix it with a bleaching powder, that water would gain the pH of that bleaching powder. The water would have no effect on the pH itself. So water just kind of vacillates back and forth. The same thing as if I apply water to hydrogen peroxide. Now, we know that they sound similar, H2O and H2O2, all right? But however, hydrogen peroxide is about 40% denser than water, H2O. And the reaction that we get when we mix hydrogen peroxide into a solution, or even just we mix it into any solution, because it's volatile, it starts to break down or decompose immediately. So hydrogen peroxide is very different from water, and that creates lots of confusion for people in our industry because you come up with all types of urban legends about water and the role that it plays. For example, take a look at this video and what this educator is saying about water and adding it to your bleach.
Use water to remove your lightener from the hair because water reactivates lightener. How do I know this? Because water is H2O and developers H2O2, meaning that they are similar in their composition, which also means if you're...
So how about that story? Now, I am sure that this person is a good educator at what they do, but they're really not on point with what they're saying to you. Here's the thing I think they misunderstand, is that if you add water to bleach, it is true that bleach will lighten hair. You do not need to use peroxide. You can add water to bleach, but that's because of the persulfate salts that are in the lightener, things like ammonium persulfate and magnesium persulfate and potassium persulfate. Those persulfate salts, alkaline, are part of that decomposition process from a bleaching powder. So when I mix water with bleach, the bleach will lighten hair, but it's not going to lighten hair as fast and as rapidly as it would if I added peroxide to it, because by adding peroxide to it, I'm creating a catalyst, if you will. Peroxide is acting that extra release of oxygen. Remember that peroxide is an acid, bleach is an alkaline. When you mix the two of them together, you get a chemical reaction. And the way that it manifests itself through peroxide is through the release of oxygen. So when I mix peroxide with a high alkaline product like a bleaching powder, it accelerates the release of oxygen. And of course, as we know, peroxide breaks down those conjugated bonds you've heard me talk about, or what we call double bonds. Remember, double bonds in the hair enable the hair to absorb more light and affects its depth. When I break a disulfide bond, or when I break a conjugated bond, I should say, what happens is the hair begins to reflect more light than it absorbs, and so the hair gradually becomes to get lighter and lighter and lighter. So even though sometimes these people do videos, they're influencers on Instagram or on Facebook, they're not always accurate in the things that they're sharing with us. So you need to do your due diligence. And whenever you hear something that doesn't sound quite right, do your research. Part of owning the education is to do your research, not have someone give you all that information. Do your own research so you own that and it becomes part of who you are. So I thought that was an interesting video I wanted to show so you can see what's happening out there and why sometimes I become so frustrated because people don't understand what a peroxide does, what an alkaline product does. They don't understand any of that. So, with that being said, let's now think about peroxide. Where should peroxide be on the pH scale? We know if water sets around 7 or 7.5, peroxide is 40% denser. It has much more hydrogen in it. So peroxide probably would have a lower pH, somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5. Sometimes it even goes as high as 5. And here's why. Because we're not using liquid peroxides today. We're using cream peroxides, which have humectants, conditioning agents, stabilizing agents in them. And so nowadays, you qualify and are within a range. As long as your developer is within a specific range, you can then label it to be a specific volume or a specific percentage. So let's now take a look at the pH of 20 volume peroxide. So step back, relax, and now we're going to take a look at peroxide. All right, I'm sure you found that interesting. So now we find peroxide in that case, in the case that we just shared with you today, around a pH of 5. So now we kind of understand where each one of these live on the pH chart. Where does hair live? That's important. And if we think about an optimum pH for hair, remember, hair itself doesn't have a pH at all. Hair takes on the pH of whatever environment you place it, much like water. So if I take hair and I place it in a highly alkaline environment, the pH of that hair will become more alkaline and the hair will swell and expand. If I place the hair in an environment where it's high amounts of acid, the pH of that hair will lower and the cuticle layers will constrict. So I'm either swelling it or constricting it. And of course, in a color service, we're doing both. We swell it during the process of the color, and then we need to constrict it to bring it down to more of a normal pH, where an optimum pH before the client leaves the salon. So the optimum pH for hair is 4.5 to 5.5. I know you all learned that in beauty school, but somehow we take information and we put our own spin on it. And I continually hear people saying the pH of hair is 4.5 to 5.5. Hair has no pH. Let's be really clear on that. Hair takes on the pH of the environment in which you place it. So now we've talked about water, we've talked about peroxide, we've talked about the pH scale. Now let's go on to another issue that I've had people sending me messages about. Seems to be a video out there on social media platforms saying that when you mix an acid and an alkaline together, they kind of come together in the middle, wherever the middle of that mixture is, which is absolutely not correct. Whenever you mix an alkaline and an acid together, the acid will take on the pH of the alkaline product. So if I take and I mix a color at 9.5 pH with a peroxide at a 5 pH or a 3.5 or a 4.5 pH, that peroxide will take on that pH. And the reason it will do that is because that chemical reaction is manifested through the release of oxygen. That's how we get peroxide to release oxygen. We use that oxygen release to carry the dye intermediates into the hair strand, into the cortex of the hair. We use that oxygen release to develop the dye intermediates into an actual color molecule. We do use that oxygen release to fracture and break down the structure of the hair so there's a place for the artificial dyes to live. So those are the things that peroxide does, but it does those because we have accelerated it with an alkaline. Now, here's what we know. Even though you have a peroxide that says 5 volume or 10 volume or 20 or 30, it doesn't really measure the amount of lightening you can create with that developer. The lightening of that developer, the ability of it to lighten hair, is not based upon the percentage. The ability for it to lighten hair is based upon the alkaline mixture that you mix it with. I'm going to give you an example. If any of you have ever used base bumpers, a base bumper is nothing more than a very low volume developer, usually 1.5% or 5 volume, mixed with a high lift color. Why? Because the high lift color has a larger window of alkalinity. Remember that terminology, a larger window of alkalinity, which means it's going to stay alkaline for a longer period of time. It allows that 1.5% to maximize its release of oxygen. You know, we all learned in beauty school that, or we were taught, I should say, that H2O2 at some point becomes H2O. And that's true. However, that is not measured by processing time, because normally with every hair color that you work with, other than a demi-permanent where you're using a low volume developer, at the end of the dye deposit, once you've achieved complete dye development, there's still a window of time where oxygen or oxidation continues. So that tells me that the higher the level of color or the higher the window of alkalinity, the more oxygen release I can get. So for me, I use that as an advantage when I'm formulating my colors in the salon. If I take my color and I mix it with a lighter level of, if I take my developer and mix it with a lighter level of color, I can get it to release more oxygen and I can get better dye development. Let me give you an example. Many people think that 10 volume has more deposit than 20 volume. That's what we've all been taught, and that's not really true. Here's what happens. 10 volume disturbs less melanin in the hair, so the hair is already deeper or darker, okay, which might influence you and make you think that, you know, you're getting more deposit. Secondly, it's going to fade away quicker because there's less oxygen release with a 10 volume than there is with a 20 volume. So if I want longevity out of my color, it only makes sense that I would use a standardized volume of developer, which in the case of hair color today is 20 volume, to give me the maximum amount of longevity, because I'm going to have more dye development with a 20 volume than I will have with a 10 volume. So those are things to keep in mind when you're formulating. So let's get back to our videos. Let's see if mixing a bleach with water will change the pH. So here is our demo of mixing distilled water with powdered lightener. You make the decision. I'll see you back here when we're finished. Okay, I bet that was eye-opening, right? We mixed distilled water with powdered lightener and had a pH of 11.5. Holy cramoly. Because that's where powdered lighteners set today. They set in the high alkaline range. Why? Because we asked for it. We said it's not lightening fast enough. I want to make her lighter. I want to take a level 2 and make her platinum. And so we asked for them, the color chemists, to make more aggressive products. Years ago, lighteners were at a 10.0 pH or 10.3, but now they're 10 times stronger than they were then. And still, for many people, it's not enough. Craziness, absolutely craziness. So we tested water and bleach. What about peroxide and bleach? I mean, peroxide, 5 pH, bleach, obviously 11, around that area. What happens if I mix peroxide with bleach? Well, I come somewhere in the middle. You take a look, you decide. I'll see you in a minute. All right. Well, I guess we answered that one. Yes, absolutely. We had peroxide and bleach, equal parts mixed together. I think we had a pH of 10.5. So still alkaline. Sorry, don't know what to tell you. It's science. There's in our industry, there's a lot of opinion, a lot of speculation, and a very small amount of science, and that's how you create what I call urban legends. So we always ask ourselves this question, well, what if I mix more acid with my alkaline? What if I take the bleach and instead of mixing 1 part of peroxide, I mix 2 parts peroxide to 1 part bleach? Well, I'll tell you one thing that will happen to you. First of all, okay, you're going to have you're going to have more oxygen release. That is true. You will have that, but that's going to cause your bleach to get puffy and swell. And if you're putting it in a foil packet, it's very possible that it will bleed out of the packet onto the scalp, and you'll end up getting bleed marks in your color application. It also, if you mix it that way when you're working on a global bleach application, it's very possible that it will creep. All bleaches creep anyway. Nobody has a bleach that doesn't. Don't let them tell you that. It's the nature of bleach. You know, you're releasing oxygen into a compound. It's like making a souffle. So it's going to creep. That's why when you're doing a global bleach application, you take 2 trips through the head to make sure that that bleach is where it belongs. All right. So now we're going to do 2 parts peroxide, 1 part bleach. Sit back and enjoy. I'll see you in a little bit. All right, well, there we go. We used 2 parts of peroxide to 1 part of powdered lightener, and a pH of 10, 10.0, 10.5, right in there. Not much of a move at all. Still very strong, very alkaline. So what do you think that you're seeing here? What's the learning? The learning is hopefully that acids and alkalides work together. Alkali is always stronger than acid. Okay, acid reacts by release of oxygen. It also brings to the surface the question about magic solutions, where manufacturers say, we have a solution you can add to your mixture, and it will turn a permanent color into a demi-permanent color. So there's actually some international companies out there saying that they have this solution that you can use that will reduce the ammonia content in the color by 70%. Now, I'm just going to tell you what I know from working in the laboratory. That's impossible to do. Can't do that. Um, but yet they make those claims, and yet we really want to believe that. And so many of us are using these low volume developers or things that have citric acid in them. You're adding a citric acid additive to your formula. And we believe that we're making a demi out of a permanent. You're really not. You're using a permanent color, and actually demis and permanent colors are all permanent colors. If you have to mix a developer with your demi permanent color, it's a permanent color. But we're using it not knowing what it's actually doing and wanting to believe what they're telling us. So hopefully I've shown you today in these little exercises and these videos that I've shared with you how sometimes, we get misled in this business. And so as a colleague of yours, me to you, I'm going to urge you to do your own research. I'm going to urge you to, when something doesn't sound right, then research it, because there's a lot of information out there in the marketplace, and there's even more happening now all the time. I remember 5 years ago when we started at Guru Village, and we were only a couple of people actually doing online education. Today, everybody is doing online education. Today, everyone is an expert. Don't you notice that there's so many different experts in hair color today? And there is, because there's no credentials required. There's no qualifications. So anybody can call themselves an expert, and they can get out there and they can influence what's happening in this industry. And sometimes they are not leading us down a good path, a good successful path. So today, hopefully this little bit of brain smoke has helped you. The one thing I do in this program is I try to really drive home the importance of being grounded in this industry. Part of being a great colorist is not just in coloring the hair and my coloring technique. Part of being a great colorist is understanding the product that I work with. Remember, we put a chemical on a chemical structure. We're not painting on a canvas, even though we use that as a metaphor many times. We're not painting a wall in our house, even though we use that as a metaphor. We are taking a chemical, hair color, bleach, and we're putting it on the hair structure, which is a chemical compound: carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, and sulfur. So we are putting chemicals together. We are merging things together using chemistry. Now, you don't have to be a chemistry nerd, but just learn a little bit about what's happening. I'll tell you, it will be empowering for you, and will help you get through some of these things when you get faced with this information that you really question. So hopefully it's been beneficial for you today. If it has, please tell your friends. You can subscribe to our channel here on YouTube if you would like, right at the bottom of our screen here. Please subscribe and follow us. If you find this beneficial and you think your friends should watch it, share it with your friends. You can also reach out to me on Instagram at Real Captain Color. You can also follow us on Facebook, Guru Nation. And I invite you to come to our website, which is www.gurunation.net, and visit our website. Take a look at some of the educational programs that we offer. We do online education, virtual classrooms. We also have pre-recorded webinars for people who just want to download something and review it and, refresh yourself on information. And we're also, God willing, and COVID goes away, we're hoping to do some live programs in 2021. But anyway, come and visit us. You can go to our gallery and you can take a look at some of the classes we've done. It'll give you a little peek inside of what we do when it comes to education. We also have videos in the gallery, which are little video clips of some of the programs we've done. You'll notice when you go to our educational portfolio that as you look at the class, when you click on details, it will give you more text information on the class, but we also provide you a small peek into the class, what the content is going to be, what you can expect to learn, and all of that. So come and visit us on our website. Our whole goal as a company is to help empower you, to help you be more successful, to help you discover your own personal genius. So I hope I've helped in some way today. But as always, I hope to see you online in one of our classes, or maybe hear from you in some of our social media portals. But until then, from my heart to yours, I'm Captain Color. I'm out of here. Keep up the brain smoke. Have a great day. See you soon.